Chapter 20 Act 2 Underwater basket weaving or recreational tree climbing. I frowned at the course catalog splayed out across my bedroom desk. How were those real classes, and why was I required to take one? Trade school would start in less than a month, so I decided to use my day off to plan my class schedule. I'd expected basic employment skills like math and literacy. Instead, I had to pick between niche history options like the rise of the erudition epic or why we went to war. The decision paralysis was overwhelming. As I started reading about Getting Dressed 101, what it really means to wear those ripped jeans or backward baseball cap, I was hit with a sudden urge to check the harbor. Ever since tagging the Panosyn boat, I'd gotten into the habit of watching boats skim around Eridet City Harbor. The harbor's busy channels were always buzzing with cargo ships, pleasure yachts, and commuter ferries. My bay window made a perfect viewing area. With the help of a telescope, I could see everything from South River to East Wharf. I spent many hours watching the boats and making up backstories for the people on them. Maybe that yacht was carrying a diplomat to an important meeting in the United Provinces building. Maybe that pair of jet skiers were celebrating their 20th anniversary. Maybe one of the passengers on that ferry was a freshly graduated newbie eager to start her adult life in the big city. When I told Ronnie about my made-up backstories, she'd had a predictably cynical response. "You want to know the stories behind those boats, kid? Easy. Midlife crisis, tax evasion, or compensating for something." But to me, the boats represented endless possibilities. Each boat showcased a different opportunity, a different life path, a different future. Were the people on those boats happy with the lives they'd picked? Did they regret any of the choices they'd made? How would I know which path was right for me? I shook my head, trying to shake away any thoughts of boats. Procrastinating wouldn't make picking my class schedule any easier. I started reading about the next course in the catalog, kitchen chemistry. That was the class where Ronnie had met Jack. I wondered if Jack ever regretted his decision to sail east, or if he'd even lived long enough to reflect on it. I doubted it. My belief in lands beyond the mist had disappeared along with my tagged boat. The boat hadn't returned. For the first few weeks after initiating my experiment, I monitored Pier 7 meticulously for any sign of my red fish. Every morning at precisely 7 a.m., I observed a new Panosyn boat sail into view from the southwest. Every evening at precisely 9 p.m., I watched that same boat vanish into the east. But each new Panosyn boat had been sparkling clean and free from any traces of red paint. For the first 39 days, I hadn't truly expected anything. Even the most ardent small Earth advocates agreed it would take a minimum of 40 days for a ship that size to circle the globe. But on day 40, I'd woken up early in anticipation. I ran to my window at 6:59 a.m. with my telescope jammed to my eye and... nothing. Just another perfectly unblemished white Panosyn boat. I told myself not to be disappointed. The estimated time for circumnavigation was between 40 and 60 days. There was still time. But then day 59 had passed without any trace of the fish. Then day 61, and day 65, and day 70. Still, nothing. I pulled myself from my musings to glance at the calendar hanging near my door. After day 70, I'd stopped crossing off the days. Today was day 77. I sighed. I'd felt so clever and pleased with myself when I'd tagged that boat. I'd been so sure my experiment would prove there was more to this life than the daily grind. But I was wrong. In 2 weeks, I would be 18 weeks old, a legally recognized adult. It was time to accept the results of my experiment. Daydreaming about the legend of Panosyn and mythical lands beyond the mist had been a fun newbie distraction. But now it was time to focus on real, adult things, like underwater basket weaving or recreational tree climbing. I tried to settle back into reading the course catalog, but I couldn't focus. The urge to check the harbor would not go away. Fine, I told myself. Maybe a quick break would clear my head. I pulled my telescope out of my desk drawer and crossed to the window. Since it was the weekend, fewer commuter ferries and more sunrise cruises dotted the harbor. Even a few brave kayakers had bundled up against the frigid autumn air. I watched their erratic paddling for a moment before nervously turning my telescope toward Pier 7. You'd think the pain of disappointment would lessen over time, but each time I saw another unmarked Panosyn boat sail into harbor, the same aching pain squeezed my chest. As my telescope focused in on Pier 7, I braced myself for another pang of disappointment. The pain came, but this time it came to my bare foot as I dropped my telescope in shock. I scooped up the telescope and checked again. There it was, bright as the day I'd painted it, a red Panosyn fish. "Ronnie!" I skidded on the hallway carpet as I sprinted to her door. After a few seconds of enthusiastic knocking, an annoyed and groggy Ronnie appeared with a sleep mask on her forehead. "Where's the fire?" she mumbled. "No fire. I just need you to come look at something." I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the living room. "Look at what?" She rubbed her hand across her face. "Invading aliens, a triple rainbow, more chipmunks on psychedelics." "Is that a common concern?" I asked incredulously as we reached the living room windows. She huffed in annoyance. "I'm just saying it better be something good since you woke me up at 7:18 a.m. on a weekend." "Here." I handed her my telescope. "Tell me I'm not hallucinating." She scowled at me, but obediently put the telescope to her eye. "What am I looking at, kid?" she asked through a yawn. "Pier 7. Tell me what you see." As she swung the telescope around in search of the pier, I bounced on my heels and chewed my bottom lip in silent anticipation. "There we are," Ronnie said at last. "Pier 7. Stone dead as usual. No one in sight." She yawned again as she continued her narration. "There's the mini lighthouse, a newly arrived boat, and... oh." Her entire body stiffened. "Yeah. Oh." I repeated breathlessly. "Is that?" "Yep." "You mean that fish is..." "The one I painted 77 days ago." Ronnie was silent for a moment. "You painted that?" "Yep," I repeated. "I mean, I know it's no masterpiece, but I had less than 2 minutes." "So, this is the same boat that was here before?" she said, slowly processing the appearance. "Presumably." I grinned. "How else would the fish get there?" "What do the words mean?" she asked, still squinting through the telescope. "What words?" My brow furrowed in confusion. "Below the fish." Ronnie pulled herself from the telescope to stare at me. "Didn't you write those too?" "No, I didn't write anything. There wasn't time." "Look for yourself." Ronnie handed me back the telescope. I took another look at the boat. Sure enough, 3 small words had been painted below my fish. Even with the help of the telescope, I had to squint to make out the tight red lettering. "Come and see." A strange yet wonderful emotion flooded through me, like a mix of adrenaline and euphoria. Those 3 small words changed everything. They were a personal invitation to me from someone or something. Why had I been wasting my time planning out my trade school schedule when my path was clear before me? "I'm going," I said with determined finality. "Down to the pier for a closer look?" Ronnie stared down across the river. "No." I put my hand on her wrist to make sure I had her full attention. "I'm sailing east." Ronnie gaped at me. "You're not serious." My silence spoke for me. No, you can't." Her voice rose in agitation. "I forbid it. You're too young and you have too much potential. You can't throw away your life before you've even begun living." "It's time for me to choose where to go with my life, and this is what I choose. Someone wrote that note to me, Ronnie." My voice was soft but decisive. "I know this is what I'm supposed to do." "Oh, yeah? And how do you know?" Ronnie said with caustic emphasis. "You're 16 weeks old, Emily. No offense, but you don't know anything yet." She paused to take a deep breath. "I get you're under stress right now," she continued in a placating tone. "You're nervous about becoming an adult and making your first real decisions. That's normal. But don't let anxiety make you see things that aren't there. This isn't a sign from some supernatural force. It's just graffiti. The boats go by the West Coast. Literally anyone could have written that." The fire in my chest numbed as I considered her words. Then it rekindled with a spark of realization. So what if someone on the West Coast wrote the words? Did they paint the fish too? That's my fish, Ronnie! I gestured wildly toward the window. It has the same paint drop and everything. At the very least, this proves the boats circle the world unscathed. "Oh, yeah?" Ronnie said, straightening to her full diminutive height. "Have you forgotten 2 women were on that boat when it left? What happened to them? What good will it do you if your boat returns, but you've been killed by sea monsters or dehydration?" "There's something out there worth the risk," I said, feeling the truth of my words. "And someone wants me to come and see it." Ronnie was silent for a moment as I basked in the warmth of my conviction. Then she switched tactics. "Don't do this to me, Emily," she pleaded, gripping my arm as if she feared I'd disappear right then and there. "You're the best thing that's happened to me in the past few years. I can't lose someone else to a legend." My heart dropped as I considered Ronnie's pain over losing her host and Jack. All her gruffness and bravado were symptoms of her underlying sadness. Ronnie's life had not turned out the way she'd hoped. A warm thought bubbled up in my chest. "Then come with me," I invited. "What?" Ronnie's dark eyes hardened, and she instantly released my arm. "Come with me." "I heard what you said," she snapped. "I just can't believe you said it." "Why not? You wanted to go before. You told me you regret not knowing what might have been. Let's go find out together." "You don't know what you're saying." Ronnie turned her back to the window and stormed toward the kitchen. Her satin nightrobe billowed out dramatically behind her. "You might not have a life yet, but I do." She jabbed her finger into the air for emphasis. "It might not be the most amazing life, but it's a hell of a lot better than certain death." I followed my host across the open living room. "You don't know it's certain death. There's never been any bodies or blood spatters or other biological remains." I fumbled awkwardly. "Disappeared doesn't mean dead." "By law, it does," Ronnie huffed. "Better the devil you know than the devil you don't." She pulled a world's okayest employee coffee mug down from the rack. "See? You admit it! You know what will happen if you stay here." I punctuated my words with wild hand gestures. "There's nothing here but disappointing dates and dirty, mind-numbing jobs. You don't want that. You know you're better than that. It's time to do something about it. By changing nothing, nothing changes." "If I want a change in my life, I'll get a dog, not go off on some suicidal sailing trip," Ronnie retorted. "But there's something out there. Somewhere out there." I crossed my arms, returning to my initial argument. "And I believe I can find it." "Yeah, well, so did a lot of other people, and look what happened to them." "I don't know what happened to them," I said softly. "No one does." Momentary silence hung over us. I pressed my luck. "Do you really believe Jack is dead?" I asked as gently as possible. Ronnie stared down at her world's okayest employee mug and bit her lip. Emily, no, she said at last. This is crazy talk. I'm going back to bed. She put down the unused mug and turned to leave. Well, I'm going east. I slapped my hand down on the kitchen counter so loudly I surprised even myself. The look of genuine concern in Ronnie's eyes made me feel ashamed, but I pressed on. In 2 weeks, I'll be 18 and free to do whatever I want, I declared. I'm going to send in an application for a spot on a scientific vessel, and then I'm going to go find whoever wrote me that invitation. We stared each other down, watching for any crack in conviction. At last, Ronnie sighed. I'll make a deal with you, Emily. You go to trade school. And if, she raised her hand to cut off my protest, if, after your first trimester, you still want to get on those boats, we can sit down and discuss it seriously. And you'd come with me? I said, half joking, half desperately hoping. Sure, she said non-committally. But with all the doors trade school will open for you, I think you'll choose a wiser one. She should have known better from Jack.